What's up, guys? Welcome into another edition of Bogey Free. We are coming at you with some Genesis Open action this week. I have my usual co-host here, Anthony. You can find him on Twitter at Amixta. What's going on, dude? How are we doing tonight?
Doing great. We have real golf this week. We're done with the pro-am stuff. We have a real field with quality golfers. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. Last week was kind of a shit show, so hopefully we'll well, I know you had a good week. We'll get there in a minute, but I did not have an excellent week. It was sort of a treading water week, so hopefully I can get back on the good foot here. But joining us tonight is Andrew. You can find him on Twitter at Fanshare Sports. He obviously is the brains behind the Fanshare phenomenon. What's going on, Andrew? How you doing?
Not much, man. How are you, Matt?
I'm good, man. Just excited to have you on. We were just talking last time you were on, you hit a winner, so no pressure.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, the bar was set pretty high with Patty Reed at Augusta, but we'll see if we can repeat that.
All right, let's.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. It's always good to talk to you. Real quick before we jump into anything too specific, of course, you can subscribe to us here on YouTube or over on iTunes. But why don't you take a second, Andrew? I think pretty much anybody who listens to this show probably knows what's going on over at Fanshare. But why don't you give us the elevator pitch? You know, the award-winning elevator pitch for Fanshare.
Sounds good. Happy to do that. So as you guys know, Matt, you've been using Fanshare for a while. I think you're one of the earliest adopters, actually. We're pretty well known for ownership. I think at this point, basically we're tagging every time a golfer is mentioned across the DFS and betting industry, and sort of keeping track of those cumulative mentions every week tends to, in most weeks, correlate to ownership. Although, noticing some trends recently where, maybe there's a little bit more game theory going on this season, I think, than in past seasons. Having said that, I think the ability to kind of digest, huge volumes of data into these bite-sized trends is nevertheless pretty useful. So, we sort of carved out a bit of a niche with ownership and sort of, gauging the industry buzz around golf and during NFL season as well. But now we're really just trying to kind of build out the platform and make it more robust. So offer, not just ownership projections, but, a lot more data points that can help people build their lineups. So we've built, I guess our most recent tool is what we call our research database. So basically that allows you to filter and view DraftKings scoring data by different, I guess, categories. So you can filter by any event or combination of events over the past 5 seasons. You can filter by course. You can filter by course type. So whether it's a TPC, different designers, green type, the standard kind of data points that DFS players tend to take into consideration. So adding more of that, we're always open to feedback and really trying to build this out for our subscribers. So we do have a history of doing that and trying to tailor the site as much as possible for the people that actually use it. And coming up, we've got, some big things coming up, which I was hoping to have an announcement by now. But, anytime you're trying to, overhaul your website completely and your user experience, it's going to take a bit of time. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be launching our new site, which is going to look and feel, totally different, to be honest, and hopefully be a completely upgraded experience. All the same data and tools will be there, just in a hopefully a better overall experience and easier to navigate for the members. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been using it ever since I started doing this show. We talked, I guess 3 years ago now. When
so, yeah,
it must be at least, right. So yeah, it's a very useful. Just gauging ownership, but also we're going to talk about the course here in a second. And I think, I don't know if it's actually underutilized, but just like the trending topics that you guys tag too, for as far as like stats that people are targeting for the course, I think is really valuable and might not get clicked on as much as like just looking for who's being talked about, but it's a pretty cool tool to see what's being talked about as well. So
yeah, for sure. And actually, you bring up a good point. I think there's a lot of aspects of the site, and part of this is due to us, needing to do a better job of communicating everything we do have on offer and how to use it. But there's a number of things like trending topics. It's interesting to see the kind of subjects and the narratives, that are being developed over the course of the week, but also just like, actually clicking on a golfer's name and then diving into the content beyond, the tags and kind of getting a feel for what's driving the discussion. If you see a golfer has mixed sentiment, I like to click on an article that might have, negative sentiment just to see, okay, what's the kind of argument against this particular golfer in any given week. So, I mean, it's the tags and the kind of the main dashboard in FanShare Pro is there to kind of act as your first point of reference and kind of distill, as I said, this huge volume of data into a fairly succinct format. Having said that, I think, there's obviously a lot more information you can dive into if you have the time.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't we jump in, or actually I do have to shout out the Listener League winner from last week. T-Fed won, took it down with the 4 of 6 line. Actually, I guess, it being, a 54-hole cut makes that a little bit easier. But had 3 guys in the top 10. So yeah, good on him. FinFan 18 up there again, Anthony. Just
dominates us.
Taking all of our fucking money every week.
You'd have him on the host.
And then in 3rd place, Papa Jones. So congrats, Dad, on the cash.
Well done.
So yeah, it's just great when we just lose money to FinFan every week, and now my dad's cashing and we can't get up there. It's fine. This will be a better week, I think. So why don't we jump into the course? Riviera, it should be pretty familiar. It's been in rotation on tour for what seems like forever. It's a par 71, plays around 7,300 yards, a little bit more. Anthony, you did a little bit, I guess, on your stream, but why don't you do a quick, stats that you're looking at this week? What's popping for you, and how are we limiting our pool here?
Yeah, I mean, the big 2 numbers that come up for me a lot, at least looking at cut makers, is current year DraftKings points and previous year strokes gained on par 4s. Those are the 2 numbers that come up in basically every iteration of like any cut making model I try to make. And then obviously you want guys who are going to find birdies and birdie opportunities or scoring opportunities if they're going to, place in the top 25, top 10 for DK. So that's the majority of what I'm looking at. I mean, we obviously have a lot of par 4s here at Riviera, and it's a tough course. So a lot of like the initial data just says, hey, like, go after the good golfers because those are the guys who you can trust. But, we do still want guys who are going to gain strokes on par 4s, those 500 to 550 yard par 5s. They got to score there. And, obviously tee to green is always something I'm looking at.
Yeah, and it varies a little bit, but Riviera always pretty much plays in like the top half of most difficult courses on tour. It's been as high as the 5th most difficult over the past few years, but it's also drifted down like into the 20s. So it kind of depends. We're looking at a ton of weather this week.
Perfect. It's been a while.
It looks like Thursday is the tee times are definitely going to be affected. I don't know if the PM guys are going to get their full rounds in or not. I don't pretend to know much about the weather, but it does look pretty shitty. So I guess we'll figure that out as the week goes on. So keep that in mind, like follow along with us over the next day and a half. So, if we are stacking tee times, but assuming we're not, we do have some popular options this week. We always do this, just sort of a buy or sell, Andrew. So up at the top, the 2 guys who are popping the most in the first run of my ownership is DJ and Bubba Watson. DJ's obviously been incredible, you know, at most courses, but I think this is sort of exceptional as far as his course history goes. He's been in the top 5, I think 6 of the last like 9 times that he's played here. Won a few years ago. So, Andrew, are you willing to pay all the way up for DJ this week?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm a bit biased because I'm one of the people that rostered him last week and ended up getting burned. So, you know, I think the recency bias is going to hit a few people. I think he was 30% owned last week. Yeah. You know, it is DJ, so we're not going to put, you know, too much stock in an off week. Having said that, I mean, if you're paying up, most expensive golfer, I mean, you need a top 10, top 5 at least, right? So I don't know. I think I'm going to go for a fade this week. You know, I do think he makes an interesting kind of contrarian. I know, Matt, you said you saw him getting a bit chalky, or?
Yeah, just from the first run, I think that this is what I've been struggling with so far projecting ownership this year. Like every time that he's started, or really any time it's the most expensive guy, it seems like there's not as much, I don't know how to describe it. They always project out lower than they end up for me. So I'm just sort of going off of like, he's about even with the other guys up at the top right now with my projections, but I'm just assuming that he sort of bumps up and gets some buzz and people end up finding ways to get up to him.
Yeah, this will be interesting to sort of keep tabs on throughout the day tomorrow. I mean, he's 7th in tags, you know, 13 start calls, 1 fade call. One trend I have noticed over the last couple of seasons is that most expensive golfer in a deep field tends to go under-owned. You know, I know DJ I think he was most expensive last week, and obviously he popped. But yeah, I do think we're going to see a drop off in his ownership just because of that poor performance last week and some of these other attractive options kind of just underneath him. I think Justin Thomas is going to be higher owned at this stage. I'm a little bit surprised to see him kind of second in tags at the moment, but he's obviously got, you know, great form and solid course history. So, yeah, I think, you know, probably worth considering a DJ lineup or two because I think you're going to get some leverage there from an ownership standpoint.
All right. Amico, how about you? What are your thoughts on DJ? And then you can jump into course history darling Bubba Watson.
I mean, DJ's the best golfer in the field, right? Like I feel like we talk about him like every show. Like either he's not in this section, or like either he's not in this section and we're saying play him, or he's in this section and we say fade him. But then he ends up being like owned the other way. You know, like that's just kind of how these guys work. I feel like up top. So. I'm playing DJ. Like I'm probably not going to be able to fit him like in a cash contest just because I think the pricing is really tough this week. I think that DraftKings did a really good job with pricing, and I think it's really hard, you know, to find a guy under 7K you can play in cash. So, but I think in tournaments you still want some exposure because I mean he's still a guy that can, you know, beat the field by 5 strokes, and like you just can't win without him. And an informed DJ is just like the most dangerous golfer on tour, and you know he's played great this year. And like you said, he's played really well here. So definitely in on DJ. And Bubba is my probably my cash anchor this week. I mean, I'm all in on Bubba. I actually don't really play him that much, so it's kind of rare for me. But I mean, he's won here 3 of the last 5 years. One other top 15. Had a fourth place finish a couple weeks ago. So like he's not in terrible form. And I think that the price is really good. I mean, 9,700 I think is a pretty steep discount over like a guy like Rory who maybe has like a similar range of outcomes. So, I mean, I'm definitely in on Bubba. I think that we're getting him a little cheap here, which explains some of the ownership on top of the course history, but I think I'm going to be playing him for sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm probably, I'll probably decide based on what DJ ends up coming in at, but I would imagine that he's going to end up being a fade for me. I rarely, if ever, roster 11K and up guys, and when I do, it's usually because it's like, you know, the freaking like RBC Canadian Open or some bullshit, and like there's just no other options, and you just have to because of all the win equity. But I think the top of this range this week is for sure stacked with a bunch of guys that could win. So it will be interesting to see where ownership sort of settles in that range. As we go down, these three guys aren't necessarily necessarily projecting to be like the absolute highest owned. But just a couple of names that I thought were interesting. Obviously, we have to talk about Tiger. And then Finau and Fleetwood, a couple of guys who have sort of had mixed results recently, maybe burned some people in one of their last two starts. What are you thinking here, Andrew? Are you interested in any of these three guys?
Actually, none of them are in the only lineup I've put in so far was in the PME Open. Mm-hmm. None of these three guys are in there. You know, Finau, again, I don't think, you know, he's a guy that is sort of immune to recency bias and kind of, you know, he just racks up so much ownership over the long term that I don't think people are going to be necessarily too put off by, you know, one-off week. I mean, doesn't have great course history here. Fleetwood is actually getting a lot of buzz. I mean, we tag bets as well at Fanshare, so I was noticing, you know, a lot of people jumping on his kind of 40-1 win number. So that's driving a lot of the narrative around Fleetwood. Having said that, it does look like there's a bit of value in his DraftKings salary vis-a-vis his odds. So I do think he'll soak up some ownership on DraftKings. He's got third most start calls right now on Fanshare. Again, he's a little bit like Finau. I mean, I was actually surprised he only came in around 14% last week, because I just assumed, I mean, he's right up there in terms of guys with the highest historical ownership. Fleetwood, Finau, you know, you're rarely getting those two guys under 15%. So I think he'll carry some ownership this week. Having said that, again, I mean, the recency bias is hitting me personally because I had him last week and he sunk my cash lineup. So Tiger's interesting because I think he's going to come in lower owned, very mixed sentiment at the moment. And, you know, with Tiger, you just never know. There were two tournaments last year that kind of popped when Tiger was low owned, and that was so at the Valspar in March last year, he was just under 13%, and he came in third in DraftKings points. And then API, he was chalky, and he came, you know, he had a good showing there. But then again, PGA Championship, I think he was 7% owned or something. So it almost seems, and I know this is a small sample size, but with Tiger last year, it was like, you know, when the sentiment was suppressed and he came in under owned, you know, he seemed to have some of his bigger weeks. So, you know, I'm not going to shy away from Tiger this week.
Oh yeah, all the goddamn Tiger this week.
All right, Matt.
Just inject it into my veins. I'm fired up. I can't wait to see Tiger win this. It's going to be great. Anthony, what are you thinking with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stay consistent here and keep fading Finau. Really don't like to play him. Like, very similar to like Ricky Fowler, like just always very popular. Not really somebody that I tend to play unless he really stands out, and he just doesn't really stand out that much this week. I mean, he's a good course fit in terms of like you know, the statistics, but it doesn't have great course history here. The recent form really isn't great. So I just don't really see a reason to play him. I'm all in on Fleet Goat. Andrew mentioned it. Like, I just think he's underpriced. Like, I think this guy is just a world-class golfer. I think Vegas agrees. Like, he probably should be closer to 9K. than he is, and I'm gonna take the discount because again, like I think the pricing is really sharp. I don't think that there's a lot of mistakes, but I do think that Fleetwood is one of them. He's played pretty well in terms of like the peripheral numbers, even though he like maybe hasn't finished as highly as we'd like. He's still like gaining strokes in a lot of ways, and again at a course like this, I think I just want guys who are talented golfers, and Fleetwood is one of those guys to me.
Yeah. I think he.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Matt. I was just going to add on his pricing, Anthony. I think he had the biggest drop off in salary on DraftKings. He's down $1,700 from last week, right?
Yeah, it was like 10-3, and they dropped him all the way to 8,600.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably an overreaction. He, as much as last week was disappointing, like it was pretty much just that first round. He sort of got some things going in the middle of the event there. And even with sort of not having his A game, like he's just always going to hit like 70% of his greens and always have a shot. Like he's just too good to be 8,600. So
agreed.
I'll gladly take anybody who wants to have recency bias against Fleetwood. Please, by all means, fade him because I think he's solid.
The unfortunate part is I don't think this is getting past the DFS industry.
I know it. I feel like a few years ago it would have though. Like it's definitely the community as a whole is definitely sharpening up. Like this would have been no, screw him. Like I had him in 80% of my lineups last week and he missed a cut or he didn't play well enough. So go screw him. It just doesn't happen like that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So as we dip down a little bit, Adam Hadwin kind of jumped out as an interesting price to me. Like Anthony, you mentioned like the pricing is pretty solid this week, but I don't know. He's 7,800 seems a little on the cheaper side for me. Are you diving into some Hadwin there, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in on Hadwin. Again, like I don't mind laying in the chalk when I think it's a good play. I mean, Hadwin is like a POA master in terms of the putting, and I know you're into that, Jones. So like, I don't want to like poo-poo the putting, so to speak. And he's a good golfer. I mean, again, like he has a lot of cut equity at a lot of these events, especially West Coast. Like West Coast Hadwin is quite good, and I don't know. Like for me, I feel like again, like the price for the cut equity seems low. I mean, we can kind of quibble over like how much upside he really has, but he's coming off like a pretty strong finish at Pebble. He's made his last 4 cuts. He's made his last 4 cuts here. So he does feel pretty safe. So again, at 7,800, I think that he's someone that you're probably going to have. And again, it's going to be really popular. Like these are the guys where like in cash games, it's like there's always the guys who are like 50+% in double ups. Like I would imagine Hadwin is one of those guys, but it's for the right reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting thing to note. I do in the course preview and trends article over at RotoViz, I call it SOFA. I mentioned it last week. It's just scoring over the field average at a given event. And he's 6th in this year's field at Riviera. So he's averaged like almost 31.5 more DraftKings points than the field average in his 4 starts here. So it seems like he can get around here pretty well. Andrew, are you buying the Canadian there?
I'm buying. Yeah, I'm gonna show some loyalty to my countrymen this week, and I'm going all in. So yeah, I mean, he's just checking all the boxes for me. Agree with Anthony on the price. I mean, 7,800. You can stuff him in there with a Fleetwood, and a Bubba, or even a JT quite comfortably. So, yeah, no arguments for me. I mean, I did notice, did a little digging earlier this week, put out a tweet on top 5 and average DraftKings points gained. Par 71s between 7,200, 7,400 yards. Last 3 seasons, Hadwin came in 5th on that list. So, yeah, course history is there, form is there. He will be chalky most likely, but I'll eat that chalk.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other guy in this like 7K range that I think is, again, like sort of just an interesting price. Like I would maybe expect him to be maybe a little bit higher based on his cut equity and the fact that Amico touts him every single week. Keegan Bradley, are you riding the Keeg train again this week or no?
No, I'm actually not. I mean, listen, I think that if you're going to live by the Keegan, you have to know when you're going to die by the Keegan. And I don't think.
So you've noticed his finishing position just dropping like a fucking rock over the last few starts.
All right, easy. Don't be rude now. All right, this is we're having firm discourse here.
Was he was like DFL made cut last week, right? He pulled like the Tyrone Van Asswagen. That was like his whole brand last year was just making the cut and coming in like T74.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not in great form. Like the last couple events haven't been great, like you said, and he doesn't really play this course very well. He's missed a cut 2 the last 3 years. It doesn't seem like a great stat fit. Like, again, like maybe he has decent cut equity, like he makes it through, but there's like no real upside for a T25 in terms of DK scoring. And, you know, I mean, we get Hadwin for $500 more. Like, I just don't really see a reason to play a guy like Bradley. There's a couple other guys like in the 7K range I think I prefer over him. You know, even outside of Hadwin. So I'm gonna fade Keegan this week, but it is not without respect, Keegs.
That was a professional tease there. I like that. That was good.
Thank you.
I saw what you did there. Andrew, are you a never Keeganer or no?
I'm not a never Keeganer for sure. I'm probably not on Keegan this week myself, but I did notice Lee Aldrich, who writes our new Under the Radar article, which he started about 3 weeks ago. He's tabbed Keegan as an under the radar candidate.
Yeah.
Citing, you know, his pre-anchor ban course history between 2012 and 2015, making his last 17 cuts, including 3 top 10s in that span. So look, for 7,300, hopefully you get a made cut. I think Anthony mentioned probably not expecting too much more in terms of a top 25. So maybe in a cash lineup, I'd throw him in there. But he's not someone I'm in love with.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I tweeted out earlier. I almost wrote him up for a DK Live, and then I was like, what the fuck am I doing? This is just ridiculous.
Then you realized it was Keegan?
Yeah. Then I was like, wait, I need to talk to Brad Messersmith ASAP.
Yeah. Like Brad, get on here, Brad.
I know.
Talk some sense into Matt.
We miss him. He's missed on the Degenerate show. I don't know. I was gonna bring up Stanley just because he was 6,600, but I don't really give a shit. If you want to say he's a pivot later, you can. Before we jump into the pivots, I want to remind you guys you can get into the Listener League. I posted it a couple hours ago, and it's already about halfway full. So make sure you jump in. 50-man again this week, $5 to get in, pays the top 3. The link will be on one of our Twitters. It will be in the iTunes description, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, jump in, take me and Anthony's money, and you know, just pay it forward somehow. Keep winning. So let's jump into the pivots, because I think this is an interesting week. In general, like we mentioned, it's a stronger field, and there's some good golfers that are going to go under-owned. So from the 9,500 and up guys that we haven't talked about, Amico, where are you leaning right now?
I mean, I really like Bryson. I don't hear anybody talking about Bryson. He's been killing it on the Euro. 4 straight top 10s. He's a top 12 this year. He's playing really, really good golf. I was only played at Riviera once, but he did make the cut, finished 41st. So not, tremendous, results. But I just think, like, again, like this is a guy who's gotten so much better over the last like calendar year or so, and he's in great form. So I mean, because the strength of the field is so high, and I think people generally just like Rom better. Phil's coming off of a win. Bubba is going to be the chalk, because of course history, stuff like that. So I could see Bryson going really low owned here, and I still think he has a decent amount of win equity. So I'm going to go in with him in tournaments this week.
All right, Andrew, who are you gravitating towards up here?
Well, aside from Bryson, I guess in that range, I mean, there's one guy who's just popping off the charts for me right under 9,500, but above 9,500, it's looking like Rahm. I mean, unbelievable current form, right? I mean, says it all. First time at Riviera, so might see a bit of an ownership hit because of that and the course history narrative. But you know, fourth most DraftKings points gained in the last 3 events, something like 5 straight top 10s. You know, I don't think you can go wrong with Rahm this week. So yeah, I mean, honestly, Phil, like considering the form and the history, it looks like he's going to go under-owned. I mean, people love the he can't win back-to-back narrative. So
great.
I mean, if you want to jump
good
in,
as the he can't win narrative.
It's almost as good as he can't win the tournament again the second year in a row narrative. So, I mean, look, when you look at current form, course history, I mean, with this new feature we have on FanShare Pro, I call it the double flames. So he's top 5% in average DraftKings points gained over his last 3 appearances at Riviera. So he's got like 67% sentiment right now, which is low for a top tier golfer. So I think Phil's coming way in under the radar. So
yeah, but he's old and he played golf on Monday. He played 2 holes on Monday.
Yeah.
Andrew, are you fucking crazy?
Is this like the NFL with the Monday night
Just
overtime theory?
Just insane. Yeah, no, I want all of the Rahm. He came out top in my course fit model. We saw when he had his first full season that he wasn't particularly bothered by never having played, you know, a course professionally, at least. Like, I'm sure he's been here before. But yeah, so I'm not too worried about the first time thing. I know, I forget who tweeted it out. Somebody was talking about a couple of trends with, you know, previous starts here and having to know the course a little bit. But I'm not that concerned with Rahm. I think he's good enough that he can figure it out. And I really am just sort of staying in there. Like, a lot of Rahm, maybe a little bit of Bryson and JT, and just sort of like load up on some of these guys that we're about to talk about. So Andrew, you mentioned you have somebody under 9,500 that you are very interested in. Who you got?
The X-Men. Why are we not talking about the X-Men? Again, he's the only other guy with the double flames, top 5% in DraftKings points gained over the last 3. I think he was T9 last year at Riviera. Only 1 appearance, so you know, maybe people won't buy the course history narrative quite as much. Look, he'll probably get some ownership. I mean, he is one of the hottest, you know, players on the planet right now. But I mean, he checks a lot of the boxes for me. Took a salary dip from last week, so I'm definitely going heavy on Xander.
Anthony, it looked like you agreed there.
Oh yeah, hard agree on the X-Man. Also top 20 in POA putting in the field, which definitely helps, and just in great form, like Andrew said. So I don't want to belabor the point too much. I mean, he's just a good play.
Yeah, and you know, with the guys above him right now, like, he's just a guy that shows up in these like star-studded fields and just plays well. Like, he's going to see all these other guys here and want to prove it. So I completely buy into that with Xander, more so than a lot of other guys. Anybody else that you're interested in, Amico, over here? Like, I guess go down to like 8,500, 8K, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cam Smith. I think that he's like a nice fit. Just under Fleetwood. Finished 6th here last year. Again, in decent form as well. Has a win this year, but he's making a ton of cuts. So like, we have really good cut equity, really good like T25-ish equity overall. And you know, he's a decent fit. Not, you know, he's not a perfect fit, but he's very consistently like gaining DraftKings points, even when he's not like finishing in the top 10. He's giving you like top 10 level DraftKings production. That's what we care about most, right? So I'm gonna keep rolling him. He's 10th in strokes gained total this year, so you know, doing a really great job, I think.
Yeah, he's a little bit cheap for my liking as well. I always like him. Andrew, you got anybody else in this range? I have one more guy that I'm very interested in.
Yeah. So one guy that's popping from I mean, if we're talking about underpriced guys, I mean, how is RCB only 7,800? I mean, he played pretty well last week, I think. I think, did he have like a drop off like on the last few holes?
He had a rough like I think final round or third round. I forget. One of them was tough for him, but overall good turn.
Yeah, overall I think he came ninth in DraftKings scoring. Just looking at his recent PGA Tour events. Oh, bear with me.
Yeah, last week he doubled both of the par fives on the back nine on Sunday, so that didn't help.
Oh yeah, I saw that on TV.
Yeah, he had a couple of sevens.
Imagine a couple birdies and you know, he's super chalk this week. He still might be super chalk at 7,800. I mean, 31st ranked golfer in the world. Last three PGA Tour events, 9th in DraftKings points, 18th, 3rd at the CJ Cup. So yeah, again, cash. I mean, he's a lock for me, and probably throw him in a GPP as well.
I gotcha. Yeah, I think that makes sense. He's definitely underpriced. Just going back up a little bit, just all the goddamn Cantlay. Like every little bit of Patrick Cantlay this week. It's like a home game for him. It's gonna be great.
His ownership will be interesting, Cantlay, just because he's kind of in that soft range, right? Like a lot of people are going to gravitate to Fleetwood underneath them.
Yeah.
Finau above him. I don't know. Do you think he's going to go overlooked a bit?
I could actually see all four of the guys in between Fleetwood and Finau. So Cantlay, Leishman, Casey, and Adam Scott just sort of going pretty underowned in a lot of contests just because of what you're mentioning. Like Finau will definitely be popular and Fleetwood will absolutely be popular. So there's just no way all those guys get a ton of ownership. Like lineups just aren't built like that. So yeah, I think if Cantlay comes in like in the, you know, mid to low teens, like sign me up for that all day. So yeah, I'll have quite a bit of Cantlay. He was, I think, 4th in my my top 20 model. So for 9,000, I'll take that all day long. So yeah. you mentioned RCB too. Anybody else in the 7K range that's really attracting you here or no? Andrew.
I mean, looking at the data, cuts made over the past, I think, 4 years at Riviera and Augusta. I mean, some people are throwing around Augusta comparisons.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Hoffman's popping. I know it's Charlie Hoffman, but for 7,100, hoping you can squeak a made cut out of him. So I'll probably have a little bit of Charlie.
Yeah, you stole it from me. That's where I was going to. Like,
he was your guy?
Yeah, he's like, it just makes so much sense. Like, just from a fit perspective, he popped like crazy in my model, even though he doesn't have like the, you know, necessarily the like flashy results that you would want. Just the way his game is set up, like he can do well here. So Charlie's definitely in play for me. Anthony, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I got two guys. You know that I'm always playing Charles Howell. Like, I just under 8K with his cut equity. Like, he's just always going to find his way into my cash lineup.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not I'm going to play him in tournaments, I guess remains to be seen. But like, there's just so much value, I think, this week in like a 6-6 in like a tough field and a tough scoring environment. Like, I just think that he's a really good play. And I love Jason Kokrak. I mean, we've talked about him the last few weeks on the show, but like 3 straight top 20s. He's 3 straight top 25s at Riviera. I think he's like a breakout golfer this year. Like, I think the guy's talented, and
he's gonna get some ownership.
So much ownership
for sure. But for 7,600, like, I'm just gonna play him. Like I don't.
Andrew, do you remember what he was supposed to be last week? I know he withdrew, but do you remember what his
He was
price
definitely in the 8s. He was like 85 or 86, and
yeah, it was pretty high, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pissed because I think we had him around 14 or 15%. I'm like, holy shit, where's all that ownership going to go?
Yeah, exactly.
But now, do we know what the story was? Like, why did he withdraw?
I think he was just on fire, and somebody had to put him out. You know, he just needed a week off after all the
okay.
The irons needed to cool off a little bit before they melted.
I wasn't sure if there was an injury.
It was the Withdrawal Open last week. I don't know if you knew.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
everybody wanted to get as far. Like alternates were withdrawing. Like Billy Hurley freaking withdrew, and he was an alternate. Okay. Like there were amateurs that were withdrawing.
Yeah, don't get me started on that viewing experience.
Yeah, I obviously Kokrak is. I tweeted out he's part of the brand now. I wrote him up over on Bet the Prop. He's at plus odds against Hatton right now.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so I quickly jumped on that. But yeah, I mean, I think you could feel pretty comfortable starting your cash line with like CH3, RCB, and Kokrak, and just like do whatever else you want with it. Like with all that cut equity, I think you'd be off to a pretty solid start.
Can we claim Kokrak as a Canadian? He's born in North Bay, Ontario. So we're gonna put on Team Canada this week, I think.
Fair enough. We need what school did he go to? Can I just mention also on Fanshare, I love that you guys have the colleges tag now too. For a lot of the guys. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So that was a new addition.
He went to Xavier. There you go.
Xavier. Yeah, there's a few gaps that we're filling in. And the reason I made that comment about Kokrak is like, could have sworn last week there was a Canadian flag beside his name. But I don't know. Maybe they've updated that.
My favorite is Jim Noose, who went to the Colorado School of Mines. That's my favorite guy.
Never noticed that.
He was like going to school to be like a mine architect or something, and he ended up like leaving to golf. Like it's just the best story. So somebody wrote it up on Golf Digest. I think it was pretty funny. All right, why don't we take a couple stabs in the dark down here below 7K? I honestly feel pretty underwhelmed under 7K.
You're kidding.
There's a couple of guys that could be interesting, but overall, like as much as this tournament is pretty top heavy and strong up at the top, I think it goes down rather quickly in this range. So Amico, who are you loving here? Since I obviously missed somebody huge.
No, I was being sarcastic because the sub 7K range.
I thought you had some fire for me.
No, the sub 7K range has been bad all year. I'm telling you, DraftKings is good at pricing this year. But I can get around on Nick Taylor. Again, like the cut equity for any of these guys isn't great, but he has made 3 or 4 cuts at Riviera. He's played a lot of golf, 6 events the last 3 months. He's made 4 cuts, so he's not like a super high equity play, but he at least has like some experience here and has been playing enough golf where we can at least like feel good about his range of outcomes being accurate. So for 6,700, I'll kind of. He's like the guy I'll play like in a tournament lineup if I'm playing PGA or something like that. And otherwise, I'm probably just like not going in this range at all.
Andrew, how about you? Anybody jumping out?
Under 7K, I'm going with age and experience in Jimmy Furyk.
Yes,
nice.
And is Stricker in the field? Yeah. I don't know. I see him. Yeah. And I think Stricker, it looks like he has a bit of course history here. So probably the only 2 guys. I know Stricker's form hasn't been great, but I feel like he's got to turn that around eventually. So only 2 guys I'm really looking at in that range.
Guys, you're completely missing like the GOAT play in this range.
Don't tell me it's Carlos Ortiz.
No. Oh, God, no. I think that's a course history thing, no?
Yeah, I'm just looking at your sofa. I thought you were going to hit us with some numbers.
It's actually like, the more I look at this, Matt, but go ahead. Who's the GOAT?
No, it's Brandon Harkins, like all goddamn day.
Tell me why.
He's like by far in the 7K and below range. He's by far the strongest course fit in my model this week. He's coming off 26th in Phoenix, 28th last week. He's hitting like 75% of his greens. Bunch of rounds, half of his rounds in the last couple of events in the 60s. Just give me all the Harkins at 6,800. It's happening. It probably won't happen now.
But. Yeah, I mean, you enjoy that. I don't really. I think anytime you dip below 7K, you're just like you're just praying. Like,
but this is like, you know, this is you're maxing the birdie and you're throwing him in like a lineup or two.
No, yeah, of course.
This is not like, this is by no means a cash play.
Well, hey, when you say all the Harkins, I mean,
yeah, all of it. Just
that's not a 5% equity play for you.
All
right?
all of two lineups. Otherwise, like as far as fit goes, like I could see Johnny Vegas playing well here. 6,500, I think, is maybe a little bit cheap on him. Like he can snap into form pretty randomly and can score well. Keith Mitchell too, like 6,400. Like Keith Mitchell and Cam Davis are less expensive than Ted Potter Jr., who decided to just fucking shoot like 88 last week. So like you're at least getting some value there.
That's a bizarre price for Mitchell, actually.
Isn't it? 6,400? I didn't even realize he was in the field until I was just scrolling down here.
You know what? Like and that's the thing, like with guys like that, a lot of people won't even scroll that far, right?
Yeah, like how often I rarely look below 6,800. Like that's usually my cutoff.
Oh, one other guy is popping for me. That's Sam Ryder, 6,400.
I could work with that too. That makes some sense to me. Yeah. I mean, there's some young guys down here like that could, you know, pop up somewhere. Even like a Sam Saunders, like he'll probably make the cut at 6,600. So why not? But don't go too crazy. Don't fit like 3 of these guys down here and try to get like Rom and DJ or something stupid. Like you still need guys that are probably going to make the cut. So let's hop into our cash locks. So these are 2 guys that you are willing to completely go 100% in on, or, you know, just guys that you're the most confident in. Anthony, you made me go first last week, I believe. So you can go first this week.
Hey, you're the host. I don't force anything on you. But yeah, I'm going to lock in Bubba and I'm going to lock in Hadwin. Those are the locks for me this week.
Yeah, I think those both make quite a bit of sense. I'm gonna go Hadwin as well, but I'm gonna throw Tiger in there for the first time this year.
Wow,
it's happening.
Nice. I like it.
It's happening.
Going against the grain.
Oh yeah, like I think it was Hassan the other day over at Rotoviz was like, you realize sometimes your cash locks are like 6% owned guys. Like Benny on a few weeks ago, I was like, cash lock, like lock him in. And I'm like, no, actually he's like single digit owned.
You pick up a lot of equity. Like, I mean, not to elongate the show, but like you pick up a lot of equity in these like large field double ups and stuff like that when you play a guy like that, because like so many plays are like 30 to 60% owned in those tournaments. And it's like in those fields. And it's like, if you have a guy that's 6% and is like comparatively priced and plays really well, it's like you just crush.
Right. Yeah, of course. And Benyon decided to just forget how to golf on Sunday that week. But other than that, he was like, I think he was in 4th place going into Sunday and shot like 77 in those shit conditions. Andrew, you want to hit us with a couple? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm going to steal Hadwin from Anthony. Like I said, checking all the boxes. Same thing with Xander. Those are my 2 guys.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Benny Hahn from a couple weeks ago, because I think we whiffed pretty hard on his ownership because he was like top 5 in tags.
Yeah.
And I think he got a lot of traction like early in the week with betting and whatnot. And even looking at it, you know, we probably should have adjusted him down come Wednesday night because I kind of had a feeling. But it sort of touches on what I mentioned, like right off the top. Like there's this recent trend, guys getting talked up, a lot of buzz within the industry. But like everybody's so sharp now that, you know, sometimes the ownership just doesn't actually get there on those guys for, you know, whatever reason. Maybe people overthink it and they end up kind of saying, oh, no way I'm playing, you know, 20% Russell Henley or whatever, like last week. But if you can identify the one or two guys that are getting talked up and getting a lot of buzz amongst like some really sharp folks that maybe don't fit in for roster construction purposes, like there's an edge to be had there. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I think it was Trey Mullinax. We thought he was going to be chalky, highly tagged, highly touted. He wasn't chalky, and he played great. So I don't know how you predict that necessarily, but you're weak with Benny on.
Yeah, it's tough because I think now that this space is becoming so like bet heavy too, I think people sometimes take you saying like there's value in X bet as there's value in, you know, X guy at this salary, and that those things don't always match up, right? Like sometimes the betting value is not DK value. Like it doesn't always work that way. Like his ownership, Benny On's ownership a couple weeks ago was definitely my biggest miss in my projections so far this week. Like it probably dropped me down like 4 or 5 percentage points in like R squared to actual ownership, just because it was, like you said, like everybody was talking about him. I was like, all right, you know, he makes sense here. I ended up liking him. So it just like inflated from there.
Yeah. And I think in a perfect world, we'd be able to separate like betting tags from sort of isolated DK only type of buzz. But, you know, that's kind of a big change to the UI. We could do it, but I don't know if it's necessarily worth it. I mean, we're all about aggregating useful information, and there's a lot of useful information, you know, in betting content, just like there is in DFS content. So, you know, the fact that it doesn't always translate to ownership, to me, I don't see as kind of, you know, a bad thing. But and you know, another point that often goes overlooked is the fact that everybody loves everybody until you have to build a lineup, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's easy to call for, you know, value on an 80-1 guy, but then you're actually, you know, you have to pick 6 guys and he doesn't fit in. Like there's always going to be that. But no, I think the way that everything shows up on FanShare makes sense. I think it's a matter of how you interpret it. Like you said before, like if you're clicking on guys, you can see, you know, whoever, Punter and Adon and whoever else, like they are talking about him because it's value and it's bets. It's not necessarily a DraftKings thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think, you know, another comment I made this year is that I think the majority of people who are setting DraftKings lineups at this point are probably consuming some form of ownership projection, and that in itself is going to influence the actual ownership. So like just because we say someone's going to be 20% owned, you know, a lot of people might look at that and say, well, I'm not going to play him. He's 10% owned.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from, you know, the first year that I started this show, like we recorded on Monday nights and we never talked about ownership. And now like I sort of changed the show around to just be like pretty heavily, you know, centered around ownership because of that. Like there's definitely things that you need to pay attention to. And I think as far as game theory goes in PGA, like it's hard to get around it. Like you can't always just play exactly who you want. Like you have to take ownership into account for sure. Especially now, like you're saying. So yeah, so that's going to do it. Thanks so much for joining us, Andrew. Really appreciate your time. Of course, make sure you head over to FanShare Sports and give it a little test run, because it's definitely going to save you some time in your process every week. And Amico, as always, you know, it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you every Tuesday night. I miss you on Thursdays though, but it used to be fun with the football show.
No question. But I
we
mean,
got to do an
talk all
AAF
week.
show or something.
Oh gosh, no, that's not my speed.
I'm fully with you on that take, by the way. I can't.
Need a break.
I just can't do it. This
100%.
golf is killing me slowly, so I can't do it. All right, that's gonna do it, guys. Thanks again for joining this week, and good luck in your contest. See you.
Thanks, fellas.